Hey, it's Carlo Cruz, and welcome back to Carlo Cruz at MMA. Today, I am with a guest. She is Sijara SarJ Eubanks, ahead of her upcoming UFC contest, January 14th. Sijara, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. Actually, between practices, getting ready for that fight and enjoying the new year so far, and happy to be here.
Awesome. I would appreciate it. Sijara, so before you got into your MMA career, you were in BJJ and you did quite well. You achieved a lot of success in different tournaments. How did you overall get your start in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
My start in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was pretty simple. I was 22 years old. Some people don't know this, but I was actually like really overweight. I was like 200 pounds. And I was just looking for like a way to lose weight and have fun like after work. So I went to a gym. I used to watch like UFC Unleashed on like Spike TV, like way back in the day, and every time I would see the fights and it went to the ground, like Joe Rogan would talk about grappling and jujitsu, and so I was like, man, that sounds cool. So I found like a jujitsu gym in Maryland and just walked in to sign up for a free trial, and just fell in love with it. Within the first 2 weeks, I did my first competition. I did like a little tournament up in Maryland, and I was just sort of addicted and just started training every day. Quit my job to train some more and got a job at the gym so that I could train all day, and it just started going from there.
During your BJJ career, did you have any aspirations at that time of going the MMA route?
Not really, no. When I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was in 2008, and there wasn't really a women's MMA scene. When I was watching MMA, it was all men on in UFC, and I would sometimes catch women's fights on YouTube, like Tara La Rosa, and like man, I was watching like Gina Carano way back in the day, doing like Bodog fight, and so like Strike Force was kind of a thing. And so I was like, as I was doing jujitsu, I was like, maybe one day I'll fight like Strike Force, but I didn't have UFC aspirations because it wasn't a thing to aspire to. Um, so as of course the sport grew and UFC opened up the division with Ronda Rousey, that's when I started to be like, hey, maybe that's something I can do.
So, how did you overall go by transitioning from BJJ into the world of mixed martial arts?
I was competing jujitsu pretty regularly. I was lucky enough to be a really blessed enough to be a really top pressure passer. So transitioning into MMA when you're already kind of like playing on top was a little easier than a lot of other women. Sort of play a guard heavy jujitsu game. So I always was a guard passer. So I think the transition was pretty simple, to be honest. One day I was in like a gi tournament and this girl had me all strung up and I couldn't pass her guard, and I remember being like, if I could punch you in the face, like that would be great. If I could just nail you right now, I'd be fine. And so I was like, oh, that's what MMA is. So I was like, you know what, I started signing up for some boxing and Muay Thai classes at my gym. I was pretty good at boxing, so I signed up for an amateur MMA fight. I won, and the rest was history. I gave myself the goal of getting my black belt before transitioning completely over. So there's a little overlap period between my amateur career and my BJJ career. And once I got my black belt, I transitioned fully into MMA.
Now, how did you go by finding your first pro MMA fight?
At the time, I had a manager. At the time, I was signed to Sucker Punch, so they found it for me.
And when you first got into the sport, I mean, you got in, you've been at this for a while now. Do you have any crazy horror stories? Have you fought for any promotions that may or may not have did weight cuts, mystery opponents, unsafe conditions? Do you have anything crazy?
Not as crazy as other stories I've heard. I didn't have a long amateur career. Only had two fights. I've definitely cornered some amateurs and been in some amateur situations. Amateur MMA is like dangerous. Like one of my fights in Virginia, the scale was all off for everybody. Like no one was weighing incorrect. There was no medicals. That was the thing when I was an amateur. They didn't do medicals in Virginia. So that was probably my biggest horror story. Is like I would be going into a fight like, so no one's even gonna like give us a physical. They're just gonna let us Like, you don't need medicals? And they were like, no, you don't need medicals. So I was like, all right. So that was the craziest thing I ever experienced as a fighter myself. But definitely just being around the game, I've seen crazy stuff. I've seen, the scales funky, or just recently I was cornering a fighter and the opponent like switched the gloves at the last second, or I've seen last second opponent switches. I've seen last second weight class switches. Um, I've seen a bunch of crazy stuff, but y'all know how it is in amateur and early pro. It's just the wild, wild west.
So early on in your professional career, you were fighting in Invicta, and then you had the opportunity of being on the Ultimate Fighter. How did that opportunity present itself to you, and what were your initial reactions when you were presented with the opportunity to do it?
I wasn't presented. I went and got that jump. So I had gone 2-2 as a pro, and I was really bummed out. I was like 32 years old, and I was like, man, I'm 2-2. I'm 32 years old. I have a new baby, and maybe this isn't for me. I had to focus on like, taking care of my kid, and at the time, partner, and we were I had started working security and was working like 12-hour days, and had kind of just like not retired, but had kind of like put my MMA career to like the back burner so I could focus on this new baby we had. So like I remember being at work one day, I was out in the field and I just went on to like MMA Junkie just to kill some time. And there was an article that was like Ultimate Fighters coming back and they're going to do a female season. And at the time, there was only 115 and 135 in the UFC. So I'm crossing my fingers, like, please let it be 35. And sure enough, it was announced as a 35. So I'm like, okay, bet. I was dead broke. I had like a bunch of Southwest points. I had just enough money to get a room at the Station Casino Hotel for one night in Vegas. And I managed to get a one-way ticket to Vegas with my points on my Southwest card. And it was like, fuck it, burn the boats, man, let's go. I just was like, this is all or nothing. I'm gonna do everything I can to get out there. So I started telling my family I'm gonna go apply for the Ultimate Fighter, and then 2 days later they're like, it's gonna be at 125. And I'm like, oh shit, like I don't know how much I weigh, because I hadn't trained in like 6 months. And I was like, okay, fuck it, we gotta lose 10 more pounds. I went out, I applied for the show, the trials went good. I was able to pass all of the striking and grappling tryouts. I got through all the interviews. And at the end of the interviews, they were like, we like you and we want to get you on the show. And I'm like, hell yeah, great. And so they're like, everybody got to go home for a couple of weeks until we come back for filming. And I went to one of the producers and was like, so I'm on the show. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm for sure on the show. He's like, yeah, you're on the show. I was like, okay, great. I don't have a ticket to get home. He was like, how did you get out here? I was like, I got a one-way ticket. I need you guys to fly me back home. And they were like, oh, all right, well, sure. And they flew me home. And a couple of weeks later, we started filming. And turned out to be a really great experience.
Now, overall, how did you enjoy living in the house with the other fighters?
Living with 14 other girls, 15 other girls isn't super fun. But I wasn't as bothered by it as everyone else was. I kind of thought living at the Ultimate Fighter was kind of cool. We lived in a mansion, like it was a beautiful like mansion house. It was boring because you can't have TV or books or music, so it gets a little boring. But yeah, our season, we were fighting for a title. So for me, it was a dream come true. I got to live in a dope house. We got free groceries. There's a pool. I didn't have to drive anywhere. I got to train twice a day with Eddie Alvarez and Mark Henry and Caitlin Chukagian. Like, for me, I had kind of hit the jackpot. So I kind of liked it. I didn't really bond per se with a lot of the other girls in the house. I've got a few friendships still with some of them. But I mean, to me, I really couldn't care less about the girls in the house. There was no beef with anybody, and I wasn't best friends with anybody either.
You mentioned your coach was Eddie Alvarez. He was a guy who also has done some training at Catone MMA where you train. Did you know him before the series, or did you just really get to know him during the show?
I knew of him, of course. I was a big fan of Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje coming into the filming. Um, But I didn't get to know him personally until we met as coach and fighter on the Ultimate Fighter. And then when I came back to Jersey to train at Nick's and with Mark after the show, me and Eddie, you know, just got to know each other a bit more, and I got to know everybody more. But I didn't know them personally before the show.
Overall, how were Justin and Eddie as coaches?
I thought Eddie was a great coach. I think he did really, really well. I think all of the assistant coaches he brought on, like Marlon, Marias, Mark Henry, Jamal Patterson, Keith Chukagian, Ryan Cafaro, he exposed us to a lot of his team as well. So I thought he did a great job. Um, no shots at the blue team, but we used to look at the coaching on the blue team, and I used to definitely think I almost every day I woke up and was so glad I got picked on Eddie's team. I think that really helped a lot. I think the mentality on the team I really connected well with. And I'm not going to say the blue team didn't have great coaching, but I think our coaches took the coaching more seriously, is what I'll say. Justin Gaethje and the guys looked like they were more on vacation. Um, and Eddie and those guys were here to win fights. So that's kind of how it felt, honestly.
A fight of yours on that series that a lot of people were talking about was your fight against Deanna Bennett. You were able to land that nasty head kick knockout. Going into the fight, was the head kick, did you know that was going to be an option, or is that something that just presented itself to you?
It definitely just presented itself. We had been working head kicks before I got on Ultimate Fighter. It's kind of thing like as a grappler. My Thai coach back home was like, "Bro, you got awesome head kicks. Like for some reason, you just are good at these head kicks. Like bring those with you wherever you go. Like never stop throwing those head kicks. Like, and as a grappler, people won't expect you to throw." And so going into the fight specifically with Deanna, I thought Deanna was going to be, and she was like one of the toughest girls I'm ever gonna fight. I'm like, come. I never thought I was gonna finish Deanna because I thought me and her were gonna go toe to freaking toe for 15 minutes. I'm like, this girl's gonna try to kill me. I gotta try to kill her. So when the kick landed, I was like, I was throwing it because I was throwing a combo. I was just throwing a combo, and I felt my foot land clean, like it hit a pad, and I almost like it goes when I've rewatched it and it happens really fast. But in my mind, like it was like slow motion. Like after it landed, it was like she wobbled in front of me for like what felt like forever before she went down. And you can tell by my reaction, I was like losing my mind because I was really surprised. I really did. Like we threw head kicks a lot in practice. I knew how to land them. But when I hit that one on the button, I was like very happily surprised.
Another moment of that series that a lot of people were talking about is when you had to cut off your hair to make weight. At what point of that weight cut were you like, all right, this is what we're going to have to do here?
I had already weighed in. And I tell people all the time, so people text me all the time, they're like, I'm going to shave my head. I'm going to say it now, I say it again. I never recommend anybody shave their head. Like, on the Ultimate Fighter, I had long, thick dreadlocks that went past my shoulders. Like, I cut off 2 Ziploc bags full of hair to get 0.25 pounds off. So a quarter pound. I had to cut, look, my hair still ain't grown back. Like I cut so much hair to get that 0.25 off. But what came about was I weighed in and I was like 26.25 on the scale, and they give you another hour. And my body had kind of dried up, and I was like, damn, what do we do? And my teammate at the time, Ariel, came up to me, who we're still cool with. She came up to me and she was like, I remember you mentioned you've got like a pound of hair on your head. And I was like, I do. I had a conversation with her like a few weeks prior, talking about how heavy my head gets, like when I swim or when my hair gets wet, like my hair is like heavy. And so she was playing, I was sitting there and I was like, man, we got an hour, and I'm sitting in the sauna and I'm like, fuck, this sucks. And she was like, didn't you say like you got like a pound of hair on your head? I was like, you know what? Let's get some scissors and see what happens. And so we just got some scissors, and Ariel, to this day, Ariel's like, that was the first haircut I've ever given, and it was like the best haircut I've ever given. So we We just nipped them off at the ears all the way around, and I shaved the complete back, and I left like just a chunk of dreads on the top so I didn't look crazy. And we got 0.25 off. And I probably, would have to regrow. That was 10 years of hair I had to cut off my head to get that 0.25. It was worth it.
Now, what were the reactions like to people when that actually aired?
Oh, people love it. People still send me the clip. Like, I guess in one of the most recent series of The Ultimate Fighter with women on it, somebody was cutting weight and the clip resurfaced, and like my Instagram was blowing up from people being like, they replayed the haircut clip last night. So I actually still get a lot of people talk about it. I probably hear about that probably a couple times a month. Just earlier, I was telling somebody, some girl was like, I'm gonna shave my head if I need to make weight. And I looked at her hair and I was like, don't go bald, shorty. You ain't gonna have enough. But a lot of people think that that's a funny moment in my career, and I get it a lot.
Now, during that season of The Ultimate Fighter, you beat Roxanne Modafferi in the semis to go into the finale. What was that moment like, knowing all the sacrifices, all the work that you put in, to know that, you were fighting for that belt?
It was incredible. It was one of the greatest achievements of my life. To be able to be in the Ultimate Fighter, going into the Ultimate Fighter heavy, knowing that a year before the Ultimate Fighter, I was 2-2 and wasn't in the UFC and didn't think my career was gonna go anywhere. I thought I was gonna be a security guard or something. And to be able to go on a tear like I did, 3-0, and uh, be able to come out the house with a title shot was incredible. I was really proud of myself, and it's still one of the greatest achievements I've had.
Unfortunately, because of some troubles during the weight cut, you weren't able to fight against Nico. But your fight after that, your UFC debut, was against Lauren Murphy. Did not being able to fight in the finale give you some extra motivation for that fight against Lauren?
No, no. My motivation was to keep my job. Because when I got hospitalized coming into the finale, technically when you're an Ultimate Fighter, you're still not technically a UFC athlete. You have to get the contract. So by being hospitalized, I didn't technically get my UFC contract. So just the fact that they offered me a 6-fight deal coming off of the hospitalization, I just felt like I was like, bro, I did all of that through the Ultimate Fighter. Now I'm fighting for 10K and I got to keep my job. So I just wanted to make sure I kept my job. That was my motivation. So went out there, beat Lauren Murphy.
You fought in several UFC cards, and one that kind of sticks out for me, you were fighting right after COVID in Jacksonville. You were on that card, I think it was Smith and Teixeira. What was that like? Obviously fans were gone. It was bubbles. What was that whole experience like for you?
It was crazy. I felt like it felt like the Twilight Zone, like a movie. Like, am I really out here fighting? Like, people are afraid to leave their house. Like, it felt like, felt crazy, like an episode of Black Mirror or something. But I was really proud to be a part of it. I was really excited to be a part of it. I was really blessed and glad that I had an opportunity to get out and move around the world while people were, forced into lockdowns and people were sick. So I thought it was cool. It was pretty sick. The fight went well on top of that. And it was weird fighting without fans. But one of the things that a lot of fighters learned is, when you fight in these Apex arenas now or these empty arenas now, you can hear your coach like so well. So that was a lot of feedback I got coming out of that Sarah Morris fight. Was me and my coaches were like talking, like communicating in the middle of the fight, which normally I haven't been able to do because you can't hear over the crowd. So that was pretty cool.
Now you're getting ready to fight Priscilla Cachoeira here in a couple of weeks. You didn't fight last year. Last time in the UFC Octagon was the end of 2021. Are you excited to get back in action?
Yeah, I'm excited, man. It's been a long time off. I enjoyed 2022. It was a great year. But yeah, I'm ready to get back out there.
And
Very
now,
excited.
overall, what do you think of Priscilla as an opponent?
I think she's tough. She's game. She's definitely challenging to deal with. I've seen a lot of her fights. She doesn't go away. Um, she's hard to put away. So I'm expecting a nice game, tough opponent. So we got to make sure that we're dotting all our I's and crossing all our T's and staying sharp. Um, and look forward to, God willing, a victory for us on January 14th.
Now, what components of your game do you believe give you the edge in this matchup?
My grappling is always the edge in any matchup, if I'm honest. So I'm always trying to, yeah, I'm always trying to get that fight down, trying to get that fight to the ground. I think my striking has come leaps and bounds over the course of my career, so I'm never afraid to keep it standing, keep it on the feet. But I think my grappling is the thing that's going to give me the edge in this fight and every other fight.
If you had to go back and do it again, start from the beginning of your MMA career, are you happy that your main base is the BJJ? Is that something you wouldn't change?
I wouldn't change that for the world. I'd give my left titty for the type of jujitsu I have. I'm serious. I love my jujitsu, man, and I love jujitsu. Jujitsu is one of them things that I loved before I did MMA, and it's one of them things I'm gonna do after MMA. And I'm like real jujitsu, like in the gi. I still train in the gi twice a week. I love my jujitsu, and I still think for MMA, especially the way the game has evolved, the grappler, either the wrestler or the jujitsu guy, um, I think is always at the advantage when it comes to fighting, because fights, even street fights, end up on the ground. So no, I wouldn't change that for the world. I love my jujitsu base, and if I had to do it all again, I would do it again, just like that.
So I've been a fan of the sport for a long time, and one thing that I've noticed is now a lot of the fans watching the sport in 2023, you categorize them as the casual fans. They may not fully understand, and I've been at fights where you have BJJ practitioners, wrestlers, they're doing their thing, they're on the mat, they're getting booed, they don't understand it. Overall, when you hear and see stuff like that, what goes through your head?
I mean, I'm not a fan of fans. That's no secret. I'm surprised anybody even likes me because I can't stand MMA fans so bad. I think my first reaction is this. One, I personally think it's up to the commentators and who they put cage side to educate the fan base, right? Like I'll be honest. Hopefully this isn't too controversial, but sometimes I'll be listening to the fights and the fans will boo, and then I'll listen to the commentators and they'll almost be like in favor too. They'll be like, "Oh well, he's not doing enough on the ground." And not all the commentators are the same. Some commentators I think are more educated on the ground than others. But sometimes what really frustrates me isn't that the fans don't know, because I don't expect much from fans. I think MMA fans, God forgive me if y'all are fans of me, but I think the majority of MMA fans are a little dense, and don't really understand the intricacies of what's going on the ground. But just like any other sport, you learn by watching. Like if you've never seen football and you watch football, the people who are talking on the TV sort of explain what's happening in the game. And I think that's what is the job of the commentators and sort of the analysts and the people behind the production of these shows. I think that's where I do get frustrated when I hear boos and then I don't hear like Joe Rogan to me is very educated on the ground, and Joe's gonna be like, I like Joe because Joe will be like, I don't know why the fans are booing because this is a great position. I'll be like, yeah, Joe, like tell them. But not all the commentators are that educated, and it's just part of the game, man. Hopefully, as the game evolves, the fans will get smarter. I talk about it all the time. Like if you watch football, football fans are smart, bro. They know what's going on. They know plays. They know like routes. They know players. They know trade deadlines. And MMA just hasn't evolved that far. I still think MMA fans are like, we want to see blood, and that's it. I think MMA fans are still at the stage where even on the feet, I've seen fights. As a matter of fact, I just saw somebody give Priscilla Cachoeira a female fight of the year versus I forgot the other girl's name. Yan, I think, or Kim. And I'm like, no shots to Priscilla or to either one of those fighters, but that wasn't the most technical fight I've ever seen. But people just want to see two fighters, male or female, get in there, slug it out. Like that's why the slap league is a thing, because people just want to see people get hit in the head. And, MMA is a lot more than that. So hopefully, you know, I'll probably be retired by the time fans get educated.
A few years ago, at first it was announced that you were going to have a title shot against Valentina. Thing got shortly canceled after Lewis and Cormier became the main event. Does that still drive you? Does that still fuel you to fight for that belt?
To fight for the belt? No, not anymore. I'll be honest. This is probably the first fight where I'm not really fueled to fight for the belt anymore. Um, I got 2 fights left in my contract. I bounce back and forth between 35 and 25. I would love to reclimb that ladder. I'm just looking at realistically how much time I want to continue to put into MMA. I just don't have it as a goal anymore, and that's cool. I've been able to accept that, and I'm cool with that. I didn't even get into MMA to be a champion, like and so I'm like, I don't really need to be motivated by the belt anymore. I'm just motivated because it's fun and I like it. I'm good at it, and this is what I love to do. So that's motivation enough.
Our last question for you, Sarge. In a perfect world, what happens on January 14th?
Get my hand raised. Period.
Well, Sijara, thank you for sitting down and talking with me today. I wish you nothing but the best.
Awesome. Thank you. I had a blast and would love to come on again.
That's Sijara Eubanks. I'm Carlo Prusa. Thank you for watching Carlo Prusa MMA.
Peace.